All right, we are back for the second part of session 3. I hope your eyes are bloodshot from all the reading that you did of the documents that are there for you. As I said, building your skills as a union steward is very, very important. And what you see in this diagram here is the relation between your individual changes and how your personality and skills are going to change, and the collective change and how your local union will change. And these are all a part of a very positive process. Because if you don't change, we're dead. And that's a problem with many unions, where they've had the same stewards and they've been doing the same procedures for decades, and we're losing. We're losing members, we're having non-members come on, we're politically losing because open shop states are growing rather than decreasing. And so we have to do this kind of a change. So as I said, you really grow as an individual. You learn a lot of new skills. For example, you're going to learn how to be a public speaker. Many of you who don't want to talk are now going to have to speak up at small group meetings. You're going to be making presentations in a grievance meeting. You may be talking to people in the community. You may be talking to the riders. And these are all skills that the ATU training program will help you learn. You may learn mathematical skills that you never had before. You're figuring out rates, you're figuring out overtime, you're figuring out insurance benefits. And all of these things are very complicated if you haven't done them for a while. They're not impossible because people know how to do it, but you just have to understand that this is what you're going to do. I also have to stress that now you're a public figure as a member of the union. And so how you behave on the job and off the job is a reflection on the union. And so be careful what you do. Conduct yourself in the most responsible manner, both at work and at home. So these are some of the documents you're going to see. Being a steward in hard times, steward in communications, public speaking. I have an article in here on the steward's morale, and that is how you as an individual and how your local as a whole can keep your morale up. Because you will find as a steward that sometimes you want to go home and drive off a bridge because things are just so discouraging. Either the company is being tough, which they always are, or often your members are being tough. That is, they want miracle cures. They want you to do it, and they don't want to participate, or they want something which is impossible. And so you cannot do it. And you begin to internalize that it's somehow your fault and not a part of the situation. So the story on building stewards' morale is exactly for that. You're going to look at what happens with a disgruntled steward, what happens when you're unhappy and how to get out of it. You're going to see the steward's role in negotiations, and we're not going to be talking about that as much during this session as we do in the collective bargaining training, but it's very important. And then you're also going to see the steward's prayer, which is a great document that was given to me by another organizer. One of the things which is very important as you become a steward and your personality changes is that often you've had disagreements with members before. And sometimes they're about how grievances were handled, sometimes there are personal issues, sometimes there are arguments about which team should win the Super Bowl. Now that you're a steward, you've got to drop these grudges. You can't have quarreling among stewards and among the officers. You can have them when you're a member, but not when you're a steward, because this keeps you from developing leverage. It's very, very important. And as we often tell our kids, and one of the things that I said to you was the role of the steward is being like a parent. And you tell your kids when they have a spat with the person next door and say they'll never want to play with them again, you say, no, they're going to be your friends. Don't hold grudges. And we say the same thing to you as a steward. And it's discouraging sometimes to see in locals how officers or stewards will quarrel with each other, and sometimes in front of management. And if there was ever a display of how to weaken the union, this is it. So don't do it. You have to reach out to all the members and all the officers, build good relationships. This is, again, a reminder. It's almost like being married. Occasionally you'll have disagreements, but you love each other. And that's what the union is. If you let these petty differences distract you from the important job of defending the contract and organizing your members, you're going to fail and you're not a good steward. So one of the things that you're going to do is you're going to learn how to plan strategy. That's an important part of being a steward, because you have to sit down and you think, how am I going to get from here to there? What do I want to win? How am I going to do it? How am I going to get my members involved? And I think this quote here from Herbert Swope is a great one. I cannot give you the formula for success, but I can give you the formula for failure, which is try to please everybody. As I said, you're sometimes the doctor. A member will come to you and say, I think I should have X. The contract doesn't provide it. And you have to tell that member, I'm sorry, but this is not here. And just live with it. So planning strategy, sitting down, thinking through proactively how you're going to resolve a situation is very, very important. What managers can you go to? What pressure can you put on the employer? What members can you get involved? Can you go to the community? Can you go to the riders? Can you go to the politicians? All of these things are very, very important, particularly if you have a big or significant grievance. All right, and here's a great poster that I always like to use as a reminder for people when they forget to think. This is another one that I often use, Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. And again, this is part of your union skills as a steward in figuring out strategy. Because the definition of insanity is doing something which doesn't work out and then doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the results to be different or to do different. If you have a company which is constantly refusing to process grievances, refusing constantly to treat you with respect or to try and resolve problems in the workplace, don't keep doing what you were doing. Don't get discouraged and go home, but look around for ways to build leverage and to force them to treat you the way they should. So as I said, these are methods of being a great union steward. You have to understand the importance of organizing your co-workers. Read these articles on leverage and use the organizing model to settle union grievances. One of the great things of pressure tactics, and this is an invaluable list of 198 nonviolent activities you can use to create pressure in the workplace. So I suggest you go look at that, print it out. I did not include it as a separate document because it's so readily available online. Again, one of the most important words for being a steward is spelled L-I-S-T-E-N. And you can review the articles on stewards and public speaking about how to talk, but often listening to someone with respect is the most important part of building them into the union. And what will often happen is if you're a steward, you will have someone come to you and tell you a problem. And this is the 210th time you've heard this problem, and you want to just go to sleep. But for the member who's bringing it to you, it is at that point the single most important issue in their lives. And so you have to treat that with the respect that they want. Listen to it, take notes. We're going to be talking about these techniques when we do the investigation of grievances, but treat them with respect. Listen to what they're saying. Often you will hear things that they're not saying. For example, sometimes members will come just because they're mad at the company. And we've seen this expression in a lot of workplace rage and frustration. And sometimes they just want to get back at some supervisor. They may not even have a true grievance. And you have to listen to them, let them vent. You know, this is what I said about being a father confessor. You have to be like a parent. But then you have to say, look, here's what you have to do to solve this situation. And it may be just a question of individual behavior, or it may, as you look at it proactively, a situation that the union could take up. But in any case, listen carefully. Don't talk, listen. One of the areas that we have found in doing the training is the difficulties that new stewards have. And in one steward training class I went to, a young man said that he had never even seen a grievance form, and certainly not one filled out. The issue is this: you need to learn about being a steward from other stewards just as you learn about being a driver from other drivers or a mechanic. So what you would do is, if you're a new steward or you want to be a steward and you're really listening to this for that reason, ask the stewards to show you grievances totally filled out. All the steps, have them explain to you about documentation. You should go sit in on a grievance meeting, even if it's not your grievance. Watch what happens, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here is just talk. When you see it in action and you participate in it, that's the experience that you need to gain to be a really great steward. So you watch these experienced stewards, and as I said in the first class, what are qualities of a good steward? And without exception, we do classes, people will say, best steward I ever had was one who would listen to me, just as we talked about in the previous slide. Stewards who knew the contract, stewards who knew the industry, stewards who could be trusted. All of these are very, very important because it gives a positive view of the members to the officers of the union. So after talking to this young steward or young steward wannabe, I wrote this article, I Just Became a Steward Now What, which is attached and is part of your homework. So we're now reaching the end of session 3. You will have a lot of homework to do, but I want you to focus as a steward on what is the most important advantage for you of being in the ATU. That is, when you talk with your friends about your work, what do you describe as a union advantage? Because I think it's very important as an organizer of your co-workers, who will often get discouraged and often angry, you need to keep positive thoughts. And so thinking about what it means to you to be in the union is very important. If you are a new steward and a relatively new hire or a young worker, all you have to do is look back, as all of us do, into our work lives in non-union workplaces. And what's the difference? And we could find hundreds of lists of items on the list. So this is a good discussion question. It'll help you focus on the positive values of the ATU and be able to tell your friends and coworkers about them. And then when you're done, listen to a beautiful rendition of the union song, Bread and Roses. See you the next session.